Hello, my name is Michael Lambert, and today I want to talk a bit more about Brexit, and I want to talk in particular about why I believe that we will likely rejoin the EU much sooner than most people think. A lot of people are talking about it being several lifetimes before we rejoin, but I think for various reasons, which I'll explain later on, I think it's likely to be sooner rather than later. Indeed, if we don't manage to rejoin, we are going to be in really big trouble, because there's no future for us outside of the EU, none whatsoever. But I would first like to comment on a couple of other things that happened last week. You've probably been following, or may have been following, some of the COVID inquiry. It's not getting a lot of publicity, but it's quite fascinating. Last week we had a whole series of cabinet ministers coming on and explaining why nothing they'd done was wrong. It was all everybody else's fault. And a lot of people blaming Johnson for his indecision and so on. Johnson, of course, is going to be giving evidence next week, and I think the week after that it's going to be Sunak. Sunak hasn't yet managed to find his WhatsApp messages. They somehow or other are not available, no doubt because they will all be seriously incriminating if they are found. But I think, again, the way he's handled these WhatsApp messages, the way he handles everything, really, Sunak is utterly pathetic. And when you think he follows Johnson, who probably did more damage to this country than any other single human being in history, and then followed by the utterly pathetic Liz Truss, and we've got now this fool, Sunak. I mean, really, how unfortunate can a nation be to have foisted upon them three such leaders? But anyway, last week he threw a hissy fit, like a 7-year-old girl, about the Elgin Marbles. Now, the Greek Prime Minister, Mr. Mitsotakis, came to London to see Sunak. It was a sort of official visit, and he'd come on behalf of the Greek nation. And apparently it was agreed between them beforehand that they wouldn't, when they had their meeting, they wouldn't discuss the Parthenon Frieze, or the Elgin Marbles as we call them. So anyway, Mr. Takis was interviewed by Laura Kuenssberg last Sunday, and seemed to me a very reasonable, decent, quite a nice guy. And towards the end of the interview, Kuenssberg asked him, "What about the marbles?" And he said he was quite diplomatic. He didn't say, no, we want them back or we demand them back or anything. He just said, we hope we can come to some arrangement whereby we can maybe borrow them or something, whatever. But he just answered the question. Now that prompted Sunak to go off on the deep end. And no, you weren't going to meet him. So he snubbed the Prime Minister, and the whole of the Greek nation was snubbed. Unnecessarily, undiplomatically, stupidly. This man's a clown. He's an idiot. He's a complete fool. And to add insult to injury, he actually said that the Prime Minister could meet with Oliver Dowden, the Deputy Prime Minister, if he wanted to. And you just think, how can you be so inept? You know, we need friends like Greece. It's an important trading partner. They also are having problems with asylum seekers. A country we would want to work with, but no, he answered a question when asked it on television, and that was enough. You pathetic little man. So then he's gone off to COP28. Now he's gone in his big plane, the one that cost an absolute fortune. Was it 300 seats? I don't know who else is going with him. But he's gone off on that big plane, and the king, he's gone there as well. He's gone in his plane. He's got another big plane, and then David Cameron, he's going there as well. He's gone in his plane. So they all got their own planes, 3 planes, all going all the way to the Middle East to COP28, where Sunak is going to appear as the Prime Minister who put back, delayed by 5 years, the introduction of all electric vehicles, who is presiding over a country where we've opened a new coal mine, and who is going to issue lots and lots of licenses for drilling in the North Sea for more oil. I mean, I don't know what sort of reception you'll get, but when you're actually going to a conference that is going to discuss global warming and cutting emissions to behave like that with the 3 planes. And some of the staff, Claire Coutinho, the energy minister, she went out on a commercial airliner, so she will have probably gone first class. Well, look, it doesn't matter because we'll pay for it. And you think we've got a cost of living crisis. 3 men have got to go 1 plane each. And when you look around the country at the moment, I know I say this every week, we've got the highest taxes almost ever, we've got terrible cost of living, poverty, we've got destitution, we've got people being evicted from their houses, we've got people living on food banks, people can't feed their children, we've got highest interest rates we've had for ages and ages and ages, we've got an epidemic of shoplifting crime, we've got NHS waiting lists whereby more than 10% of the population are waiting for hospital treatment. We've got corruption in government. We've got businesses going bust. And we've got the biggest fall, officially the biggest fall in living standards since records began. And on top of all that, councils are going bust. And he's out there with these big jets in his opening his oil wells. Just so tactless and stupid. And Andrew Bailey, the governor of the Bank of England, who was very much pro-Brexit, as most people know, and he said last week that Britain's growth outlook is the worst he'd ever seen, and that the economy will barely grow over the next 2 years. Brexit was a mad decision. I know we've said it so many times before. We all know it. Everybody knows it now. The Tories have stopped talking about Brexit opportunities. They don't mention it. They want to try to forget it's in the past. But it is that which is determining what's happening at the moment. I have an older son who, when he was about 4 years old, I think we had some sort of disagreement, and he said, I'm leaving, I'm going to America. And so he went up to his room and he got this little tiny suitcase and he put his couple of soft toys in it, and then he filled the rest of it up with Lego bricks, came downstairs and said, I'm going to America. And we said, okay, well done. Okay, well, good luck. It's been nice knowing you. And walked out the front door and started walking down the road. Of course, we were obviously right behind him and checking he was safe and so on. And he walked for about 100 yards and then stopped. Because presumably he thought, well, how do I get to America and what am I going to do now? And what the hell am I carrying these toys for? They're not going to be used for me. I'm sure he didn't think that, but I mean, he realised that he didn't know where he was going. But there was no future in what he was doing. And of course then we went and got him and brought him home and all the rest of it, and it was fine. But I kind of think we're a bit like that with Brexit. We've been given this idea that somehow or other that everything is going to be fantastic if we just leave the EU. And we are walking down that road with a suitcase full of stuff that's useless, not knowing where we're going. And things are getting worse and worse and worse all the time. And the response to the government is always, it's worse, it's bad everywhere, it's worse everywhere else. Look at they had recession, they had a quarter of recession in Germany. Yeah, EU inflation is 2.1%, 2.4%. It's half our inflation. And everybody knows it. Public opinion has turned. The majority of people now would prefer that we were in the EU. Amongst young people, 92% in a recent survey said they would rather be in the EU than out. Certainly amongst Labour voters, a significant majority would like to return to the EU. And what was it all about? It was about 3 things, wasn't it? It was about immigration. It was about sovereignty, so that we could control our borders and so on. It was about doing trade deals. Well, look at immigration. I talked about this last week, and I got into all sorts of trouble because I suggested that if you make it impossible, if we made it as we did, made it impossible just about for Europeans to continue to come here and do all the jobs that they were doing that were really important, and when they were well integrated, to get rid of them and then go around the world seeking people to come and replace them, bringing their families very often with them. What I mentioned, the majority of people, the largest number of people come from India and then from from Nigeria and from China. Those are the top 3 countries. The moment I mentioned that was racist, and all sorts of people unsubscribed and said I was a racist. I was simply talking sense. I mean, it makes no sense that you stop people coming from the EU and then go off around the world looking for replacements. And I just read you actually something I saw on Twitter, which was written by a guy who lives in the UK. He's Finnish, and he says, as an immigrant myself, I have nothing against immigration. But I must say that sacrificing your own freedom of movement and your access to the largest export market in order to cut immigration and ending up tripling it in 3 years is quite astonishing. And I think he's right. Just crazy. And we've got sovereignty now, haven't we? We can make our own laws. So if we want to make our products different than the products in the EU, we can do. Well, we'll sell them to the EU or probably anywhere else either. There was all that ridiculous thing about we're going to replace the CE mark with the UK CE mark. I think they've dropped all that now. But, we are free. I mean, the whole world is so interlinked nowadays. But we want to be separate, global Britain. And it was the trade deals, wasn't it? I don't know if you saw last week that the EU have done a deal with New Zealand. It's better than our deal. We did a deal with New Zealand. It's one of the only 2 deals we've done. The other one was with Australia. And the deal we did means that New Zealand farmers can export their lamb here. And that'll have a seriously bad effect upon our British farmers. The EU have done a deal where their farmers are protected. In other words, a better deal. So had we stayed in the EU, we would have now with New Zealand a better deal than the one we've got. And then the CPTPP, isn't it? The forecast for the benefit to our economy of the CPTPP deal is that it will grow our economy by 0.04% in 15 years' time. Instead of previously it was thought it might be 0.08%. In other words, that's 1% in 15 years' time. We'll get back 1% of what we lost by leaving the EU. No, we're not doing any trade deals. And so in this terrible mess where the economy is slowly collapsing, it's slowly rotting away. And what do we get from the government and from the Labour Party? They're going to solve it all by growth. They're going to grow the economy. The Tories, they're going to create a new Silicon Valley. They're going to create all these, as I said last week, all these new Canary Wharfs. They're just going to grow it and grow it and grow it. Nobody says how they're going to grow it. And it was said, wasn't it? I can't remember who said it. That I think it was Jeremy Hunt said that we were going to be one of the 3 great IT centres of the world: China, America, and us, all standing shoulder to shoulder. Let me tell you a bit about China. I had a lot of experience. I've been going there for years and years and years and years, and I've seen the whole transformation from a really very poor, run-down country to what it is now, this great, enormous superpower. Admittedly, they've got into a certain amount of trouble because they overexpanded and they spent too much on infrastructure and stuff, and they ended up supplying the whole world. They were the factory of the whole world, and for various reasons, which we all know about, they're producing or are unable to sell the quantities of goods they were able to sell before, the sort of cheap general goods that they make. But they're smart. They're not stupid. So they've realised that the future is in green technology. And a few years ago, once they realised this, they decided to start switching over. Now, at the moment, they're the biggest polluters in the world. We know that because they're manufacturing for the world. But they have a target of 2060 for net zero. But in a matter of just a few years, they've got to a stage now where they manufacture 75% of all the solar panels in the world. They manufacture 50% of all electric vehicles, and they manufacture 75% of all lithium-ion batteries. Within 10 years, they're set to own 50% of all lithium-ion batteries in Europe, factories in Europe. In other words, they're ahead of the game. At the same time, of course, America has invested whatever it is, $37 billion in their Inflation Reduction Act, which is all aimed at developing green technology. We haven't got any money. We had a factory up in the northeast which was going to manufacture batteries and got into financial trouble. They asked the government for $100 million. The government didn't have it, or wasn't prepared to give it. Instead, we're now giving £500 million to a friend of the Prime Minister's father-in-law to open a battery factory in Somerset, Tata. And you just wonder how deluded you have to be to think that we can compete in any way with all this. We've existed for years and years and years supplying the EU with lots of different whole ranges of products, and now we can't. If you're a small or medium-sized company, you can't. And so any idea of the growth on the scale that we need to turn the economy around is delusional. It isn't going to happen. And everybody knows it. There's no optimism, there's no enthusiasm for anything. We all know that we're in really big trouble. We know the government is utterly incapable of sorting it all out. And as I said before, more and more people are in favour now of returning to the EU, and more people are realising how much better off we were when we were in the EU. And the big point, which I've made so many times before, is this, that having postponed import controls for 5 different times since January 2021, we are apparently going to start introducing them in January. Well, as I've said so many times before, for a small or medium-sized firm in the UK to try and export to the EU is virtually impossible because of the bureaucracy. And that same bureaucracy has not applied at all to European firms wanting to export to the UK, but it is going to come in with these import controls. Once that does, you're going to find a huge drop-off in the number of European firms exported to the UK. And a lot of even bigger firms are going to find it's more complicated, it's more time-consuming. You've got lorries, expensive lorries. If they're going to queue up for hours or maybe days coming into the country, they're going to get more expensive. Prices are going to go up. So we are absolutely certain from January, assuming that they do go ahead with these import controls, to have much, much higher food prices and a greater scarcity. I mean, already now the supplies of vegetables and fruit are quite patchy, but it's going to get much, much, much worse. And so I think as time goes by and during the course of next year, I think we're going to find that more and more people have been clamouring to try and find some way of getting back into the EU. And I know people will say, and particularly there'll be people in the comments who will say, particularly Europeans will say, there's no way, never again, ever have you back. But nothing is set in stone. The Labour Party want to renegotiate little bits to try and get a better deal on phytosanitary and a few other things to make things a little bit easier for some sectors. It ain't going to make a scrap of difference. That is deck chairs on the Titanic. And given that, say, the majority of Labour supporters, a significant majority, favour return to the EU, I think assuming that Labour are in government, I think they're going to find an awful lot of pressure to start trying to find ways of going back in. And it's significant, I think, that Ursula von der Leyen, she said last week, I'll read you what she said, the UK is on a clear direction of travel toward rejoining the EU. And she urged young people to reverse Brexit quoting that polling confirmed that only 12% of British are strongly opposed to stronger ties with Europe. And Michel Barnier has been saying all along, he's saying time and time again, the door is always open. Now, the door isn't open as much as we can just say we're coming back. But there are many, many advantages for the EU if we were to rejoin, many advantages. And we'd have to go back with our tail between our legs. But I think the alternative is, and this is what concerns me, the alternative is so dire. I mean, our prospects are so bad. And from the position we're in, I know that, from my previous experience with business, if you've got a business that starts doing badly, you start losing customers, to turn it around, it becomes so difficult. We would have to do so much. In fact, it would almost be, it would be impossible to get back to where we were. We've lost so much damage has been done. So I think a combination of, I think, a slightly a warmer attitude from Europe, and what will become a clamour from this country, from the general public to try and find some way of returning, is going to grow. And I wouldn't be at all surprised we're not in serious negotiations before too long. But anyway, that's what I think. If you've watched this far, thank you very much indeed, as always. If you haven't already subscribed, I'd really be very grateful. Or if you know anybody you think might be interested in what I've got to say, I'd be glad if you'd pass on my details. And so, thank you for watching, and till next time, bye for now.